Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for coming. All right. Well, my name is Angie Wojak, and I'm the Director of Career Development at the School of Visual Arts. And we're really lucky that today we are joined by panelists who are all graduates of SVA's animation program. And we're going to be talking today about all of the things that they currently do in their work, and they're going to speak about how they studied at SVA and how they developed their craft and launched their careers. And hopefully there's a few people in the audience who are thinking about becoming animators, and they're going to have some great advice for you. So let's jump right into introducing the panelists. Thanks. All right. So first we have Rebecca Sugar. Rebecca is the creator of Cartoon Network's Emmy-nominated series Steven Universe. And after graduating from SVA with a BFA in animation, she joined Adventure Time in 2009. And during her time on the iconic series as a storyboard artist and a writer, she got both an Emmy nomination, multiple Emmy nominations, I would assume, and an Annie Award win. And she developed a deep fan base following many of the songs that she wrote for the show that I'm sure you're familiar with. So thank you for joining us. And next up, we have Mike Roth. Mike is co-executive producer. Yep. Yeah. Woo! On Cartoon Network's Emmy-winning artist program, where he develops and oversees production pipeline for the studio's short films, many of which have moved on to series including Summer Camp Island and Craig of the Creek. And prior to this role, he was the supervising producer on Cartoon Network's Emmy-winning regular show. Ooh. And he's also written and storyboarded on Disney's Phineas and Ferb, Nickelodeon's SpongeBob SquarePants, and he's worked on the feature film of SpongeBob SquarePants and Rugrats in Paris. So, thanks. All right, and finally we have Emmy Award-winning artist Phil Rynda. And Phil is Nickelodeon's Vice President of Artist Development. He oversees the original animation development and animated shorts program, and he identifies and develops content ideas from the inside and outside of Nickelodeon. He recently oversaw development on Nickelodeon's newest animated original, Glitch Tex. And now we're going to just jump right into some questions, and we'll have time at the end for questions from the audience. All right? Ooh. A lot of excitement with that. Okay, so the first thing I want to ask the panelists is to tell us a little bit about your current role at the studio. And I'd like to know from all of our panelists how your studies at SVA led you to be successful in your current work. So let's start with Rebecca.
Well, I'm the executive producer as well as the creator of Steven, so I'm involved in pretty much every stage of production, and I'm heavily involved in the writing, but also in a lot of the technical aspects. And SVA, because the focus is so heavily on making your own original films, I had the experience while I was there of doing a film from start to finish, and I think if I didn't know how to do that, I would not be able to do this job, because I know how animation gets done. My show, for example, is while I was at SVA, I was inking my film on paper, and coloring it digitally, which is exactly how my show is made. Knowing exposure sheets, knowing the technical aspects of animation makes it so much more possible for me to communicate with my team. But then also, because I was making original films, I'm thinking about everything from the ground up, so it helps me with the writing stages. So there was never, because I was looking at the whole picture, it's been helpful.
Great.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm nursing a little bit of a cold. So I'm the co-executive producer of the Shorts Department at Cartoon Network, which is an extension of the development program. So when projects are pitched and they decide, hey, we would like to see what this looks like finished, it comes to my department and we produce it. And I basically help oversee all phases of production, work very closely with creators. I also help service as a mentor in certain capacities. Oftentimes creators are young, so they're very good in a particular discipline, but maybe they've never done sound mixes or voice records before. So I'm there to kind of help guide them through that part of it. As far as the second part of that, I would say, we were just talking about this earlier at dinner, that one of the things with going to SVA and being in New York is that I feel I became very versatile, and that's, anyway, I'll let you take over.
No, I think that versatility thing is really key. Going to film school, we have to learn every aspect, like Rebecca's saying. And then I think for, Mike and my job have some similarities in that, we help a lot of people oversee every aspect of their show. And it's often people who have never done those things before. So I think we were talking about starting our careers in New York and also going to SVA gave us access to the information around so many parts of animation. So my job as vice president of artist development is sort of like it's a tricky one because I work for the network. So I work on kind of the business side of Nickelodeon right now, but I was an artist. I spent years as a character designer. So I always say I'm kind of like a translator at work where I can speak weirdo to people who don't speak weirdo. And it's funny, but it's true. So as someone who has been an artist and went to film school and worked on multiple productions, I kind of I champion a lot of creators and then help them communicate with the business people who often the people on the network side might want exactly the same things as the creative people, but they don't realize that they're saying the same thing often because they speak different languages. And honestly, like for SVA, it was a really, wild school. I was also an RA at SVA. So like dealing with, RA's in the room, yes. 12th floor, if anyone was on my floor. I think like dealing and meeting people in lots of different departments, and especially studying in New York where kind of the world, you can't avoid the world around you. Like it helped me deal with not deal with, but just interact with people in tons of different capacities, whether they were fellow students or people who I would just meet on the street in New York. SVA is not this weird little bubble. You're part of New York. And I think that's a very unique thing that's helped me every day.
Even the school itself is kind of spread out, so you have to really interact even to get to class.
Yeah, today I was talking to a director at Titmouse, and he was saying, he can't believe that he commuted from Long Island every day as a kid to go to college, and he's like, it was such an adult thing to do that it's only prepared him so much. And I teach at Cal Arts now, and my students live on campus, never leave campus, and then when they have to go face the real world, they're not really prepared in certain aspects.
As we're talking about what prepares you for the real world, internships are really important for students in all sorts of majors. And I wonder if you could talk about internships you might have had and what role that might have played in your career.
Yeah, I had an internship on Venture Brothers at World Leaders, and I was doing just cropping panels. I was there. Well, were we? I was with Stephen DeStefano. I think we didn't.
I was there first season.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Maybe.
And Ian Jones-Cordy was there directing at the time. And he's not here yet. He's coming tomorrow. Yeah, I learned a lot just from being surrounded by the work being done, just seeing the technical things that it took to get something done. I also had an internship at Augenblick. They were working on a Dante's Inferno game at the time, where I was doing in-betweens. Just being in the environment is really important. But I didn't get hired. So it wasn't a great situation.
Did you want to get hired?
Yes.
Well, it's interesting is also we were talking tonight at dinner about how you did your test for Adventure Time, right?
Yes.
And Phil, was Phil involved in the test?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Phil's the reason I got the test. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think Phil had Phil came to speak at SVA on a panel not unlike this one.
Yeah.
And
I think it was 8 years ago.
It was 8 years
8
ago.
or 9 years ago.
And I came up and I gave you some of my comics, and I think they ended up, I guess, in the Adventure Time floor. And then
Well, we became
and we were
like
chatting online
We
after.
became sort of like pen pals. You had an amazing live journal, and I was a fan. And then we would share emails. And I think, when I remember buying a piece of art from you.
Yeah, and you gave me advice I was asking you advice about my film.
Yeah, and then when you finished Singles, your fourth year film at SVA, I showed it to Penn, and he was blown away, and he was like, "Good, we got to hire her. Maybe she can be a director." And I was like, "Well, we don't know, anything about Rebecca other than she's a genius creatively." You kind of are. But that's, then I think I remember saying to you, like, when you're done school, we're on this new show. I think you'd be a really good fit on this show and this, this crew. So we sent you the test. But I was saying at dinner, it was a little bit of a formality because I think we all wanted to have you on the show, but we just wanted to make sure you weren't a crazy person.
I did not know it was a formality. I was very scared when I took that test.
If you had bombed, maybe it wouldn't have worked out. But
that's true. Maybe that helped me not bomb.
I brought it. It's actually I wish I had it. I wish I had it.
Yeah. So while I was doing internships, even though I didn't get work doing internships, I ended up testing. And at that point, I was sort of nervous because I was like, I can't get a job. What am I going to do? I hope this one works out. And luckily, it did.
Did you want to share anything about an internship?
I never interned, but I did get a job when I was a freshman at SVA. Was my first job at a studio called AMP, and they were doing cartoon shorts for Cartoon Sushi, and it was a real eye opener because I was like a self-taught animator, so I just kind of went in there and applied for this job and showed them some animation that I had done at school, and I had done all of my animation top pegged. That's how I was used to doing it. And they handed me the scene folder and everything was bottom pegged.
People don't use pegs anymore because of computers.
I know. But at that time, we used things called moviolas and Master Oxberries. But I was like, oh, all these drawings are upside down. They're like, wait, you animate, right? Like, yeah. So, but yeah, it was a great experience, and yeah, so.
I used to tell people never to go get internships because I sort of felt like if you can do this, just go get a job doing it. But I also think it was a little bit for me like a product of the time in animation when I was in school. So I was at SVA 99 to 2003, and animation had kind of dried up. It was like a very slow time, so there wasn't a lot of stuff. So actually, he might have been a classmate of yours, Mike. I worked for Mowdy Tuseth, who made an amazing film at SVA, and he was animating these commercials, or they were internal videos for AT&T, and they were about posture and how to sit at your desk, which I clearly don't know how to do still. But I remember lying and saying that I knew how to use Flash, which I didn't, and then getting this job as a Flash animator and sort of learning how to do it on the job. So it was a little bit of an internship, but it was really, I was getting paid to come in part-time to animate. But now I actually have changed my tune, I think because I've seen and met so many people through internships that I see Colin Howard, who is an amazing designer on Steven, he was a student at CalArts, and I met him, and he came into Cartoon Network on his internship and kind of blew everyone's minds. Yeah. And then he left school, which stay in school. But he ended up leaving CalArts early, stay in SVA for 4 years, but leave CalArts early, and working for you.
Steven.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering about is alternative career paths within animation. Because we were talking tonight a little bit about things like storyboarding, or about things that young animators may not realize are career paths or options for them. I wonder if you can all speak to some of the different fields that students might want to go into.
Well, I know that I did not realize that people were still storyboarding shows the way in such a traditional way, where the storyboarders were writing and putting up drawings and pitching. I mean, on Adventure Time, it was even on paper. I mean, we were pinning drawings to the wall that we were drawing on paper and pointing at them with a stick like it was the 30s. I mean, it was incredible.
And using Post-its.
And using yes.
And we were all in business suits and smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Yeah, I think my eyes were really opened because I had always thought, well, I'll get a technical job in animation and then I'll be doing independent comics on the side, and that's where I'll be creative, and that's where I'll be a storyteller. That's not something I'm going to get to do through the avenue of a big corporate commercial project. And then I sort of found myself in this job that was exactly what I wanted to be doing, which was writing and drawing for animation, sort of a mix of what I had learned from doing comics and just this, all the storytelling that I knew, writing dialogue for characters, doing poses for characters that would animate. I would know how they would animate because I studied animation, but I was writing the way I would write for comics, and we were just making films, but we were all sort of under pen, and he had the ultimate vision for it. So that opened my eyes that that's a job. It's an incredibly grueling and difficult job, but it's the best job I have ever had, would ever want to have. I mean, I wish I was boarding now, and I want to protect that as a job that exists, because it's a very, very traditional way to make cartoons, and it's still going on. I mean, that's what a board-driven show is. There's also script-driven shows where it's not like that, but on board-driven shows, like a lot of the shows at Cartoon Network, the storyboarders are writing all the dialogue, and they are really crafting all of the episodes themselves, and in a lot of ways, you just have a lot of creative control over the story and over the acting and over everything. I mean, on AT, I would even, we'd even get to talk about who we'd want to cast, and I mean, we were just so involved in everything. It felt like we were all making films together.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna steal something that Rebecca said, and I'm gonna repeat it probably incorrectly, but often, I'll take a lot of young people around the studios and just kind of do little tours and give people a little bit of a behind the scenes of kind of what really an animation studio or production looks like, which you don't get the full story if you're reading the books or watching the behind the scenes stuff. At Cartoon Network, I always would stop by Rebecca's office because she would always give this piece of advice, which I think is so simple and incredible, especially for people trying to navigate their careers, is you would always say, don't wait for permission to do what you want to do, which I think is really powerful. And I realize that's a barrier to entry for a lot of people, is that if they want to board, they think that people will see it in their work in something other than boarding, but you just have to start boarding. If you want to design, you just have to start designing, and the job will come if you're doing it. There isn't really, we were talking about this at dinner too, there's not much on the job training. Everyone's constantly learning and improving, but you kind of have to be able to come in and be able to perform. You have to be a professional on your first day. It's not, you can't be a student. Maybe you most recently were a student, but you have to hold yourself and carry yourself as a professional. And I think it's kind of there's a very fine line, but you can really feel it in people. I'll also say that in terms of career navigation, I'm from New Jersey. I went to SVA, yes, New Jersey. And I moved to LA, and that was terrifying. Just taking that leap was really scary. And there's versions of that leap, right? Like changing your job, changing your position. They come in all different scales, and they can all be really scary. And a friend who I met on the Venture Brothers, he said, it's not permanent. You can always come back. And I was like, holy shit, I can come back. If I move to LA, I don't have to stay there forever. So I kind of made a deal for myself, and I was like, I'm going to go on a 5-year plan. I'm going to come back to New York in 5 years and be the king of New York or something. I don't know what I was going to do. But I've been there for 12 years now, and I found my wife, who's also from New Jersey, in LA. Yes, right? And I've got kids and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know. It's always scary to do something for the first time, but it's just the first time.
Yeah, I would say, just to add to that, is stay flexible. Don't be too rigid. When I first got into animation, I desperately wanted to be the next Glenn Keane, and I got in 2D animation was kind of coming to an end, and there wasn't much left, and had to find other opportunities, and I became a storyboarder, and then that led to writing, and then that led to show running, and I think it's important not to be like too rigid or stiff-necked about what you want. Sometimes the industry has certain needs, and you have the skills to do that. So
I wonder if you could travel back in time to when you were students, if there's something you would do differently.
I would have a better haircut because I really like, I made some bad decisions, and now I realize. I don't have, I feel really good. I'm really happy with kind of my life and my path as an artist. So I wouldn't change anything, but I didn't make films. I didn't do the thing that people like Rebecca did. I didn't develop my own voice and my own storytelling ability. I worked really hard at the technical stuff, at the whole getting a job part of it. And I spent a long time a little bit in denial about that piece of it. Like, I thought I could be a show creator, but I realized I hadn't been working out the same muscle. So if I could go back, like, I think I would have spent a little bit more time on some personal work and making films. I was very kind of career driven, not filmmaking driven.
I think my answer is similar. I did like my haircut. But I smoked. I wish I hadn't done that. But I was so, I spent almost all of my time, training myself to draw better. I really want to have a great portfolio coming out of school. My animation teacher, Howard Beckerman, would always say, like, Mike, you got to make your own stuff. You have to explore who you are. Don't chase what you think everybody else wants to see. Do what you like. And I didn't spend as much time in my student film as I wish looking back, I wish I had spent more time on it. I didn't finish it. I turned it in as a pencil test. I did have that portfolio that I wanted, so I was happy with that. But I do wish I had finished my film. And I wish that, like, for every hour I spent drawing, I also spent an hour writing. Because when I started writing, it was kind of new to me. Right? I didn't flex that muscle very much. And so when I did start writing, like, I did have a voice, and I had a lot of jokes and things that I wanted to tell, but it just wasn't as refined, and it took a little bit longer for me to get there in some ways. So if I could go back to SVA, I think I would have written more comics and just kind of maybe just explored a bit more of, like, who I am as an artist.
I wish I could go back and be less afraid to like stuff. I was really of a mindset, especially at school, where if there was like a little piece of something that I didn't like, I'd throw the whole thing out. I'd just be like, and in a way, because of that, I'd be like, I don't necessarily know what I want to do, but I know what I don't want to do, and it's like this piece of garbage. I don't want to do this. I don't want to draw like this. I want to invent some, like, completely new way to draw that nobody's drawn like before, because everything else sucks. And it gave me, like, a lot of fire at the time. And then I look back, and now I look at stuff where I'm like, I remember being like, oh, this isn't good. And now that I actually really understand how the sausage is made, I'm just like, oh, this is like, there's so many smart decisions here. Like, oh, and I see why this happened, where it was like, that's what I was reacting to. Like, some little piece of this, wasn't the best decision and made it clunky. And so I just, like, threw the whole thing out. But now I'm like, now I can just watch stuff and just appreciate what's going right. And I wish I could go back in time and do that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This is making me also think about, like, I want to talk about networking a little bit, and something that I'd love for you to share a little bit about is your experience with going to earlier Comic Cons, and particularly the Hellboy story. I enjoy Hellboy story.
Mike. Meeting Mike.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, so all this.
Which one? Because you mean when I was working on the show? Or?
Well, I guess you told me this story because when we started on Steven, you were like, oh, I'm going to talk to Mignola about about, you know, deities and female gods in ancient mythology. And I was like, you can just call up Mike Mignola? And you were like, oh yeah, I met him at cons when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah. I met a lot of people at cons. Well, I guess that's
the story, but you should tell it.
Yeah,
again.
sure. Well, I used to go to I'm from Maryland, and I used to go to the Small Press Expo. I would make comics when I was. Have you guys been to the Small Press Expo? Oh, that's awesome. It's so good. And I was going there when I was like 15, 16, all the way up to when I was still in college. I would come back for it, and I would print stuff out. My dad would help me print comics. My dad's right there.
Your mom?
And my mom is there too, who was both extremely supportive of my indie comics and helped me make them. And I would take them to the Small Press Expo, and I would trade with people, which is how I met a lot of people. But also every time, like, there would be people there who I really looked up to. Like, I met Eric Powell, who does the comic The Goon, and like I traded him for like an issue 1 of The Goon. And whenever I would see people who I really looked up to, I'd be like, oh, please, like, tell me what you think. And I would get really honest critiques, sometimes brutally honest critiques of my stuff when I was like a little teenager. I remember Eric Larson, who does Savage Dragon, told me that my perspective was terrible. and there was a shot in this comic that I had done where you could see, it was a down shot, but you could see the sky in the background. And he's like, this doesn't make any sense. And I was like, and he like just like drew a grid really quick for me and was like, you can't, that's like physically impossible. And all, like everything started to click where it's like, oh, I see, like, you know, it's how the horizon works and like it's where your eyeballs are looking. And I was like, I hit the books and I started studying. And this was all when I was a teen. And also when I was trading books, I mean, I was trading books with people like Lamar, who's a storyboard on my show. We traded books at SPX. He used to walk around in an Ultraman mask. And and he traded me his remake comics, which I loved, and now we're working together. So I've also met people that I work with now. But yeah, I met Mike Mignola, and I was such a huge fan, and he gave me great advice. And then when I was starting Steven, I wrote him, and we got together, and he gave me all this incredible advice. He taught me about Ishtar, who's like the goddess of everything, like love and war and everything. She has 7 lions that pull a chariot. She has a star for a crown. And a lot of the Steven imagery is because of this one conversation.
He wrote something not long ago about, I think his daughter's a big Steven fan. And like he was like retelling a story from his perspective of when you.
I don't know if I've seen this.
Yeah, he wrote it on Facebook. It was awesome to like for me to be like, oh my god, I remember this. Like I somehow am connected to a genius.
Yeah.
But it was a really cool story where he was like, yeah, this Rebecca girl asked me all these questions, and now it's like the biggest thing ever, and my daughter loves it. And like he just was like, oh yeah, I helped on that, and his daughter was like, what?
Yeah,
like way more impressed by his connection to Steven Universe than his own work.
That's absurd. Yeah, I remember because I went over to his studio and he was working on Hellboy in Hell, and I remember he just handed me a bunch of his original pages, and like my palms were so clammy. I was like so excited. I'm like, whoa, oh my gosh, like no one's seen this yet, you know? And anyway, it was a very intense day, and I'll absolutely never forget it. But yeah, I think the big takeaway was like, if you want to learn from like the people you look up to, like I think and I'm always excited when people hand me their comics because I'm like, oh man, this is it. Like you're doing it, you're already doing it, and yeah, it's things like that. They're happening all the time. Every single one is like a great opportunity to meet somebody, learn something, but you have to want to change and improve.
Eric Larson is here. If anyone wants their perspective critiqued.
I'm sure he probably doesn't remember.
Yeah. So everyone should come up and be like, "Hey, I heard you fixed perspective." He'd be like, "Why is there this giant line of people asking me to work?" Network. I mean, in terms of kind of early career-y stuff. I mean, I think the thing that's incredible is that the industry's really small, and it starts with your peers in school or your relationships you're building at these conventions. Again, I moved to LA not really knowing anybody, but I knew of Mike's work because he was in LA a few years prior, and one of our teachers was staying in contact with Mike. So in class at SVA, I'd be seeing Mike's drawings, and apparently I was also a little bit of a jerk, and I was critiquing some of
You
them.
weren't a jerk.
But I would see the stuff. So when I started at Cartoon Network, I think were you on Laszlo?
I know.
Was it on?
Oh yeah, I was
Were you on Laszlo?
Yeah,
So I think you were on Laszlo
yeah.
when I moved out to work on Billy and Mandy, and you were on Laszlo. And like Mike's a big Steelers fan. I'm a Giants fan.
Yeah. Oddly enough, there's not a lot of football fans in animation.
Yeah, I know, right?
So when you find a fellow like animator who's into football, it's kind of exciting. So that's an immediate connection.
But then then I realized that Mike was the person whose work I had seen in New York, and then we immediately connected and kind of had this great SVA bond that at the time there weren't too many people from SVA.
No.
It was like you, Derek Dryman, Joe Horn. Like there's a handful of people. Now there's a lot more people from the East Coast in LA. But it was like kind of a little bit of, you have your creative tribe, but then there's also the people you find that like can have like a shared human experience. So that was really nice.
Yeah, I think also like just putting your work out there, getting it online. Like we find so many people, like on regular show when we'd be staffing, we would just scour the internet, look at people's comics. We'd go to comic conventions, look at comic books. So just getting your work out there all the time and just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. I think that's a great tool as well for networking. So when we need someone, we can find you.
Put your email addresses on your websites too.
Do that.
People like me get really upset when you don't.
Before we open it to questions, I wonder if there's any certain topic we haven't touched upon that you thought we should, or that you want to add anything to?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome that you're all in this room right now at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night.
Yeah.
Like honestly, like, this is like for, show of hands, how many of you want to work in animation or comics? Yeah.
Wow.
Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome. I mean, this is sort of, this is a big step in doing that, coming to stuff like this, putting in that extra effort and like really listening. So congratulations to you guys.
Yeah.
All right, let's take our first question.
Hi there. Thanks for being here tonight. It's been really insightful so far. So thanks for sharing your experiences. My name is Gary. I'm 28. I'm a independent writer producer. I work on my own web series online. We successfully got it crowdfunded.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. My question is, obviously, coming in from a writing perspective into animation is kind of an awkward way to come in, and not as an animator. I work with tons of talented people, and I know they're going to have amazing futures. But just from a writing perspective, what advice would you have beyond, obviously, using the stuff I've worked on my resume? Yeah.
Anyone want to do it? I can go for it.
I could try. Well, I think the thing with animation, I feel like okay, wait, I'm trying to think out how to phrase this. I feel like you're going into it with an attitude like drawing and writing are different things, and they're not. Drawing and writing are the same. You're explaining things through your drawing. You could be, I think if you're going to be writing for animation, you could be a writer, and that's not a clunky marriage as long as you are thinking visually. You are describing how this thing is going to look and move, because you have a vision for that aspect of it, for why it has to be animated. These two things are not different. I mean, a drawing will explain something just like your writing will, and it'll explain it clearer and faster because you're looking at this thing and it just is what it is, but what it is will have to be defined by you. So I think just maybe adjust your thinking about that gap, and then try and make something with a team that can create that vision with you, and are coming at it from a drawing perspective. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you.
Don't wait for permission.
Yeah. Crowdfunding is saying it's good.
Hi, my name is Fabio. I'm 21 years old, and I'd like to thank you all for coming here. This has already been very enlightening. So, I think my goal, and I'm sure a lot of other people's goal in here, is to be up there ourselves, talking about our experiences. And right now, I'm currently not in a field containing the arts. I'm in a completely different field. I'm trying to support myself financially while I do beef up my portfolio whenever I have free time. And the goal right now for me is to get to a financially stable point where I can attend SVA, that's the goal, and get into that field. So my question is, when you try to break in at SVA and get those internships, I know in almost every industry they're looking for fresh young faces. So if someone, I'm 21 now, but let's say I'm 25 or 26 and I'm attending SVA and I'm looking for internships, do you think the likelihood of me breaking into those industries would be lower and I'd have less chance of getting to that point I want to be?
No. No, I don't think age is a factor at all.
Not at all.
You know, the thing that we look for is talent, and if we have a need, like if a production has a need, and you can supply that and fill that gap, then you will be hireable every time.
Yeah, you know, I think don't put the time limit on yourself in terms of your age and where you should be at whatever age. I mean, I think it's like Charles Burns, who's like one of my favorite cartoonists. Someone told me he didn't really start drawing and making comics until he was 30, which like was awesome to hear because he's amazing. You know, so you know, don't do that to yourself. You know, but you know, like you're saying, that free time, that little bit of time you've got to really go for it. So you've got to, you know, squeeze every moment you can and feed, you know, that desire to, you know, Lamar is an amazing story because Lamar was working at like a paper source making comics or like some kind of stationery.
Yeah, stationery store.
It was like a stationery
Yeah.
store, and he was making comics for fun
on the side. Yeah,
And I don't even know if he wanted to work in animation, but he worked on.
roped them in.
Yeah, he worked on the OK pilot on Lakewood.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and then that was the kind of like way he got in. So yeah, I mean, you know, I don't even know if his goal was to do this stuff, right? Yeah. So yeah, just start making stuff, man.
Yeah,
and
do stuff
any
on the-
moment you
on the
can,
side.
go back, sit down, make something right now.
Thank you so much.
Hey, my name's Teo. Rebecca, I met you 2 years ago at the Cartoon Network Game Jam.
Oh, good to see you
Yeah,
again.
nice to see you guys. Whatever. I'm not that important yet. No, sorry. Anyway, so I'm 30 and I've been working in the mobile games industry for the last 8 years, and I've been since that trying to switch careers into storyboarding. And so you guys touched a lot about like coming out of school or getting internships. But when I apply, I have like this really thick resume, or I have like an empty resume, and I'm like, hey, I make comics. Like, do you have any suggestions on like in that place?
I mean, I didn't have a super slick resume or reel. I mean, it was mostly because I got the test because you knew my comics. So I think in my experience, it's been all about personal work. Mm-hmm. So if you have the personal work and if it's exciting someone, then that will be your in. I mean, maybe you could pare down the super long resume to the things that might be the most relevant.
Absolutely.
Like, whichever comics or whichever pieces, like if it's, some sci-fi project you're working on, maybe like take out everything that's not that and just keep that or so. But I think just put your best stuff forward and maybe just drop everything that's not the most impressive stuff you've done. So it's like the top 3 things or something. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be about your work. And I think it's tough to, the thing about storyboarding is it's really hard to like hand someone some sample storyboards because that's not a complete piece. But if you can hand someone a comic, that's like a complete idea. You have to approach it differently. You can't, if you make a comic that's like a storyboard, but it's like stapled like a comic, it's gonna not be good because that's not, a good comic doesn't look like storyboards. The layout has to make sense. I mean, you would have to also be interested in comics, just like how like if you write a book that you already want to be a movie, everyone can tell, and it's like no, don't do that. But like if you have stories to tell, if you have art to draw, the thing I love about comics is that you have a medium where you can do it immediately. If you don't love comics, I guess this is bad advice. But if, but if you do, I think that's a really great way to just let people know who you are. And then skills like storyboarding are all so related to that everyone can make the leap pretty quick.
One of the differences that I've noticed training people who come from comics into storyboarding is with with comics, like you can kind of go, like the audience can go through the comic at their own pace. So you could spend 20 minutes on a page and really investigate all the drawings, but with storyboarding, you have like the one panel, and that panel is really only going to be on the screen for like 15 seconds at the most, and it's going to cut to something new. So, just being very conscious of how to stage things clearly and succinctly, because you don't get a ton of time to look at it. So that was one of the differences that I've noticed.
I agree.
Can I give you guys some of my comics?
Yeah, give me your comics.
Yeah.
Come on. Sweet. Thank you. We'll take the next question while we're getting free stuff.
Okay. Hello.
Oh, wow, this is awesome.
Hi.
Hi. My name's Alexa. I'm 22 years old, and actually, when I wanted to get into the industry, SVA wasn't like financially available to me, but I was able to study abroad, study in the Philippines, and I actually did an internship there for a studio, and I was just wondering,
An animation studio?
yes, it was for
Which one?
Toon City.
Awesome. Yeah, they're a great studio.
No Cartoon Network stuff, unfortunately, or no Nickelodeon at the time when I was there. I was just curious if, I hope my question's okay. So it's kind of a two-parter. So how would you compare the animation industry from America to Asia with because I know you have to outsource Steven Universe to South Korea for some things, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just with anime from Japan, how would you compare the two industries? And also, as someone who's been in that side of it, how would you help to break out on this side of the world?
I mean, it's very different in the sense that we tend to be creating what's essentially a very elaborate set of blueprints that we're then using to communicate with our teams there, and then everything is designed to just be as clear as possible, and then all the actual animation is happening. For me at RDK and Sunmin. Actually, if you want to check out, LaShawn Thomas made a sort of series of videos about working in Korea that I think would probably be excellent to check out because that really goes in depth about it. I mean, I think it's sort of a completely different thing because my teams in Korea are doing the actual animation on paper. I mean, it's beautiful and incredible. Every time I go, I want to sit down and animate with them because that's what I want to be doing. And we don't get to do that, but we just get to plan it, and we're figuring out all the boards as essentially keys and all of the exposure sheets that will make everything clear. So we're all planning, and they're really the execution. But I think that the two worlds could definitely. I mean, it would be more in the writing and pre-planning, I think, stage. And I think similarly, I'm going to keep saying do comics over and over again because that's the thing that I did. But I think I know on my team I have unbelievably talented directors who have done this personal work that just completely blows me away. And yeah, I think I know a lot of people too have been moving into comics, comics on phones, from the studios, because that's a really great industry too. I wish they would just come to me. We could just make boards, but yeah, I feel like making comics is always helpful.
I think I'll say a name to you. There's a woman named Becca Ramos who worked at Toon City, who now works at Nickelodeon. I first met her on Chowder. She was a background layout artist, but she came from the Philippines. She started in the industry there, and then she ended up at Cartoon Network on a bunch of stuff. Becca's been on tons of projects, but she's on Shimmer and Shine, which is a preschool show right now. Becca's awesome. Becca Ramos. You can find her. You can send her a message and say, Phil said I should email you. She will know who it is, because I don't know, not too many Phils. But yeah, I mean, people do it. It's tricky. The industries are different. The way the production studio runs is the first time I went to Korea to visit a studio, I asked to see some personal work from the animators, and like the studio head was kind of shocked. They don't like a lot of the artists aren't really celebrated that way, and they don't navigate their careers in the same way. It's a little bit more technical. Whereas here in the States, developing your voice, making, we have a little more ownership over the content. So that would be a huge difference from what you've already seen at Toon City to the work that we're doing in our studios. But you can totally do it. You have experience. Good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris. I'm 24 years old and I'm an alcoholic. I'm an illustrator. I graduated from college about 2 years ago and I'm really looking into getting into animation, more specifically the concept art and character design aspect of it. And right now, I'm located upstate New York, away from all the jobs, and I'm not in a financially stable place to be able to move unless I have guaranteed employment. And I feel that's probably my greatest hurdle right now. I was hoping you might have any advice to help me get over that, or what would be a good way to basically tackle the problem.
I think you can be anywhere to get a job. You don't have to be, around the corner from the studio to be considered or to get hired. For you to get in, it doesn't matter where you are. The first job is always the hardest, right? Like it's always people don't know you. You don't have a network of colleagues to lean on. So that's gonna that's always going to be the hardest. So what you have to do is just really focus on your goal, which is if it's going to be to do characters or to be a painter or designer, concept designer. Like you have to build a body of work that's specifically aimed towards people like us to find you and see that work. So that way we can trust that you're on your way to being able to be kind of commercially viable in our world. It sounds really gross and cold, but it's true. So you don't need to do a ton of work, but if you sit down and put together 10 to 20 pieces and get them online and build yourself a little portfolio, it can do a lot of work for you.
Yeah, and apply. Yeah, just apply for jobs. We work remotely with artists all the time. Our character designer, Phineas and Ferb, was located in Colorado. And Pat Mikhail was in New York City or New York State for a while. So, so it can be done.
Do the work.
I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but I'm going to. I do have samples of my work. I would love to give these to you guys if you want.
Yeah,
Free stuff?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Annie. I'm 21 years old.
Fast. So cool.
Rebecca, I saw you early today at Steven Universe panel. We talked
Oh,
earlier.
thank you for coming.
Thank you for being there again. So this is for you and for Mike and Phil. I always loved animation since I was a little boy. I grew up with SpongeBob and Dexter's Lab, and I really love all this new generation TV shows like Adventure Time, Steven Universe regular show, which was inspired mostly a lot of people here who dream of working in animation someday and got into the habit of drawing more and writing stories and coming up with characters. So I was just wondering for you guys, what were some of the shows or movies that you grew up that you really got interested in animation?
Smurfs. I really liked the Smurfs when I was a kid, and G.I. Joe. He-Man.
I really wanted to be a Disney feature animator. I loved that stuff. I was into comics, and then I kind of got out of them, and then I got into anime, and then I kind of fell in love with the classic Disney features, and that really was what I thought I wanted to do for a long time. And then I don't know, I realized that actually isn't what I wanted once I started getting closer to achieving that.
Yeah. Looney Tunes, Fleischer cartoons. Gosh, I loved like Dexter, Samurai Jack. Let's see, Simpsons anime Simpsons. It's like all One Piece. Was a big fan of Zim. I loved everything.
Thank you. And one more thing, if it's too much, can I maybe get like a handshake for all of you guys?
What was
A
that?
handshake?
A
Why don't you
handshake,
hang
like-
out and I don't know, want to do handshakes right now for people?
Well, I guess it's not. It might be a little awkward with the table.
It's probably easier now than later.
We can
guess
wave
go
at
this
you. We
way.
can all wave at you at the exact same moment.
Thank you so much.
Thank
We're all
you.
sweaty, and Mike's got a cold. You don't want to. You don't want to do that.
Hi. First of all, just thank you guys for being here and for all the stuff you've created, inspiring us. I'm currently a film student at NYU, and I do a lot of producing. Oh, hey, NYU. Oh, okay. I
It's an
really do a lot
SVA
of-
panel.
So I mainly do a lot of producing, mainly live action, but my long-term goal is I want to produce for animation, and I was wondering what your guys' advice would be for going into producing for animation when you yourself are not an animator.
I think for you, an internship would be awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I think you have to really see how a production functions, right? So, the filmmaking is filmmaking, but the craft of animation and the process is totally different. So you really need to learn that stuff. So if you can get it, you know, if you can get an internship at a studio here in the city, you know, there's a few. I think that's how you'll find your way in. Most internships are actually production internships, so you're not really drawing. You're not doing art on those jobs. So that's what you should do.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. I just want to say that I really like your show, Rebecca.
Thank you. I really like your hair.
Oh my gosh, thank you. So yeah, my question was, so when I'm older, I want to go to art school, preferably Cal Arts, and I want to like be a storyboarder. What's the best thing I can do to make my art stand out to people who would like accept me into art school get me into like a job in like the animation industry?
I'd say be very versatile. Do observational drawing. I did a lot of observational painting, observational drawing. Draw the room that you're in. Draw people. Like you can't just draw cartoons because that's going to inform your boarding, your designing. Like everything you do will be informed by observational drawing.
Yeah.
So study, and the schools will want to see that you've already been studying. That's what they'll be really excited about, and what kind of personal voice you're bringing to that study. Then they'll know that they can take you from there to something even more, that you're driven.
When I got to school, someone said to me, "You have 10,000 bad drawings in you, so start drawing."
It's not true. You have infinite bad drawings.
Yeah, that is true.
There will
That
always
is
be
true.
more.
Just you, Mike, though. You
Just
have
me,
infinite
yeah.
bad drawings.
Yeah, I'm still working on it. Yeah, and then it's interesting that 10,000 number because I heard the Beatles played for 10,000 hours before they played on Ed Sullivan. So
That's the
But it-
Malcolm Gladwell stuff. That's all like
yeah.
I forget the name of that book, but
But
there is that the one. There you go.
But I agree with Rebecca. Just draw from life as much as you can, and just draw everything. You know. Also, one of the things that was helpful for me is like watching movies, and every time there was a cut, I would pause it and I would just draw that scene, and then I'd hit play, and it would cut. Then I would pause it, draw the next scene, and kind of just understand how the filmmaking was done for like Indiana Jones, and how's the filmmaking done for Ghostbusters, and just kind of do little storyboard schematics for yourself to just start building those muscle memories of how to cut and how to stage from the masters.
I agree with what Rebecca and Mike said. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ronette, and I was wondering what advice do you have for people who want to be self-taught animators? Because I'm currently an English major, almost done, and I feel so far away from animation, and I just want to know how would I start
Well, I mean, there are books that you can get and just start studying. There's a Preston Blair book on animation that's just like the staple classic stuff. Like,
Still the best.
yeah, it's still the best thing.
It is the best.
You might like. I don't know if you want to do some. I'm gonna guess maybe you don't want to do something that feels sort of classic, like Looney Tune looking. But these are like the fundamentals behind everything. Like it's what makes everything work. So it's really worth studying that stuff. And then I'd say that first, and then there's like the Animator Survival Guide. But I'd say that second. Preston Blair, better. Oh the gosh, that's a bold statement, right?
Whoa. And it's being recorded. It's being recorded.
Well, that's like.
Richard Williams is in the room.
Yeah. Like Animator Survival Guide is very like everything should be on ones and everything but Preston Blair is like just like real fundamentals, just like meat and potatoes stuff, like, and it's really great. And then I know I learned like it's really important to be able to draw whatever you're drawing in a space that makes sense. I had a book called Perspective for Comic Book Artists by David Chelsea that taught me perspective when Eric Larson said my perspective sucked. I bought this book and I studied it really hard. So that's definitely crucial. Like, you know, and then there's a book that was recommended to me, Loomis's Figure Drawing for All It's Worth. So between those 3 books, maybe 4 if you want to do Survival Guide and like get fancy about it. It's everything, you know. You need a figure in a space, and it moves, and all of those things have to make sense, and those will give you all the tools to do that.
It's true, and I think the internet is just an amazing resource. You know, you can see other people learning now in real time. You know, you can watch other people grow, which, you know, I love watching people draw because I think the physical act of drawing is beautiful, but also like very personal. So I learn so much just watching other people draw, and like. Sometimes you can now do that. You know, I watch Twitch streams of people who I don't even like their drawings, and I'm just fascinated by kind of the creative process. So yeah, just try to learn from others. Those are awesome books. You know, like look at stuff and think about what you're seeing, not just look at it as a finished product. Like try to think about what someone had to do to achieve that thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi, I'm
Whoop, you turned it off. You got bold with the mic, and it did not work out. We can hear you. We'll repeat the question if you can say it loud enough.
How's that? Can everybody hear me?
right here. Thank you. Hi, I'm Elias Germanakos, and I'm from Queens and stuff. So anyways, my question is to Rebecca. Have you ever had any, struggles, like, when, like, just thinking about writing, just conceptualizing in your mind in terms of writing and stuff? Like, you know, writing in your head. Like, do you ever have the struggle to come out with, like, perfectly original concepts? Like, because sometimes when I come up with, like, weird cartoons ideas, I feel like all the other good ideas are just taken or stuff like that. Like, how do you come up with, like, original ideas and stuff? Because I'm a big fan of animation and just some crazy, obscure cartoons in general, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's always a struggle. It's never not a struggle. The key is just to do it. Once you are coming up with an idea and you're trying to execute that idea, once you're like getting it out and looking at it, you start to see everything wrong with it. And if you don't get it out of you, you'll never get to step 2 where you see what's wrong with it and you start to fix it. You need to have it and then be working into it and working into it and working into it. Nothing comes out perfect on the first try. Ever. I can't think of that ever happening. Even things where a piece of it comes out just right, everything around it you'll have to like make support the part that worked. Everything is always work.
I would add, embrace happy accidents. That was a piece of advice that I got from my animation mentor. And what seems like a mistake might actually be something quite genius. So, you know, if it's working, roll with it and embrace happy accidents.
I think we only have 5 minutes, so maybe 1 or 2 questions if the first one's fast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Estera, and my question is, do you have any words of wisdoms for like young creators and or animators? Like any kinds of like words that can like help them like achieve success?
Like words of wisdom.
Yeah, finish your projects. Start them and finish them.
That's great
Even
advice.
if you don't like them, finish them.
Yeah.
And every time, like when, if you're not liking how it's coming out, just be like, all right, I'm going to finish this, and then I'm going to start another one, and it's going to be better, and it won't be this because this one's not good. You get just finish it. Don't leave it unfinished because you don't like how it's coming out. Just like put a cap on it and put it away and be like, here's an example of what I don't want to do, and then the next one won't be that thing because you'll know. So please finish your projects.
Yes.
Thank you for giving me another good Rebecca quote that I'm going to use.
Okay,
All
we
right.
have time for one more question.
Oh, it's a little, yes.
Oh.
Hi, I'm Veronica, and this is for Rebecca. What inspired you to make Steven Universe?
Oh, Steven Universe was inspired by my little brother, Steven Sugar. This show is all about him, and I just wanted to make a show about someone who I would always love to draw pictures of, and that was my brother.
I like your show, and can I have a hug?
Oh yeah.
I got a photo of this. Wait, oh no, I missed it. I missed it.
Well, I think that's the perfect way to end our panel. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.